My parents and I moved into our current house when our German Shepherd was just a puppy, so she's quite comfortable everywhere in the house. Except, suddenly, the kitchen, which used to be one of her favourite spots because all of the dog treats are in there. The kitchen has nothing scary about it, except for the fact that there's a door leading to the basement. When we moved in, I knew the basement was creepy. All cement, multiple rooms, but with one that stood out. The breaker room fit with a dusty, abandoned storage cabinet. The breaker panel and a shit ton of spray paint on the walls reading things like, "John lived here." And there's one with a saying that I can't quite remember, but it's always given me a creepy feeling. I'm not sure who lived in the house before us, but John isn't the name of the man who sold it to us, but it could have easily been a previous renter. No big deal, I guess. I never really thought much of the basement being creepy, other than making jokes to my friends about how freaky it is down there while doing laundry, until a few weeks ago. I got a treat for my German Shepherd after taking her out at night as usual, but she was timid, walking into the kitchen and darted out of the kitchen. While I thought it was weird, I assumed there might have been a rat or something, as we live in a very rural area, but I checked everywhere and found nothing. Since then, she refuses to step more than 2 or 3 steps into the kitchen, sometimes even crying as if she can't come in. I'm not sure if my house is haunted, but I can tell you it's old, and this situation is just screaming paranormal to me. I don't really know much about the property, but I'm curious if anyone has had a similar experience, or if they think this could be paranormal. It's so odd to me that she won't even come in for treats. Does anyone have any idea why this could be happening? Paranormal or not? There's this legend where I come from, the Galipote. According to Google, this is the definition. To become a Galipote, one must have a pact with the devil himself, selling their soul for the ability to change oneself into another form. A witch doctor is also able to help transform a human into this evil creature. This is not one of those legends created to make kids be respectful, or to scare them into doing things wrong. This is a nationwide legend, used to alert people who like to travel alone or in pairs. People who are too kind and like to pick up people from the road to give them rides. Or just people with luck who find them running around. Anyways, I was around 10 years old when this happened. Galipotes have never been something mentioned as much in the city as in the countryside, and so I never believed in it. My grandma always tells stories about them though. She'll say things like, "You guys heard that chicken clucking? That's a Galipote because it's after 6 p.m. and they should be sleeping by now." But you know, I never thought there was such a thing. Well, at the end of 2009, one of my cousins, let's call him Andres, disappeared out of nowhere. He was on subs and stealing, so everybody knew something like this would happen at some point. Well, 2 months later in February, we all went to a cousin's house. All my family was talking about him. The last time somebody saw him was 2 blocks away from said cousin's house. Anyway, the clock hits 1 a.m. and my cousins are watching a horror movie. I don't remember what the movie was, and me and my older cousin decided to go and listen to the gossip of the grown people. We went outside and sat with them. It was my aunt, my grandma, my aunt's cousin and a husband, 2 of their neighbours and us. They were talking about how Andres was so funny when he was younger, and how his mom was the one who introduced him to drugs and robbery. As we were sitting outside, it was on a hill. We heard something running really fast like a horse, and it was indeed a horse, at 1 a.m. in the city. Weird, but not that much. He went running at the end of the hill and we saw him. Nobody was riding him. And out of nowhere, somebody was running behind him, chasing him. We all got up because obviously we got a little scared. My grandma immediately asked us to go inside, to which I said no and went crawling to her. The neighbours got so startled that they just took their chairs and went inside their house. My aunt just said, "That's a Galipote," and started laughing. Well, we went inside and told our other cousins about what happened, and they didn't believe it. My grandma told them, and that's when they got scared. Well, it's probably around 2:30 a.m, and we were all in bed trying to sleep. We heard a knocking on the window. It was 6 of us in a room, and we all heard it. My cousin said to me, "Get up and open the door," to which my other cousin, let's call her Anna, said it was at the window. I didn't say anything, but I knew it was at the window. My aunt comes into the room and tells us to go to sleep. Her son asked her if she was knocking on the wall, and she said, "Isn't it you? Stop playing and shut up." My older cousin started crying, saying that it was the gallopot. Her mom came into the room and told her to grow up and left. Not even a minute later, somebody knocked on the window so hard that it felt like it was going to break. My aunt comes running into the room, and we're almost all crying at this point. I don't know how I'm beside the closet with my 2 other younger cousins sobbing. She said something along the lines, "Why are you guys making all this noise at somebody else's house?" I think she thought we were all playing or something. Then, the front door. Somebody knocked hard enough for my uncle to come all the way from the back room, and he goes, "Who is it?" "This is Carmen." And he opens. It was the neighbour. She said, "There's something knocking on our window." Everybody came out, but not my grandma or us. We stayed inside cuddling, and my grandma was praying. We managed to fall asleep in the living room while the adults were scattered around the living room and the room where we were. The sun is out and everybody gathers up outside. We find a shoe all dirty, a piece of hair on both sides, and pieces of corn. Fast forward a month later, and all my cousins were at my grandma's house, and she is sleeping in a room by herself. My grandma had this feeling, and she asked us to tune in for the news. There he was. The man in the news was asking for people to come all the way to the countryside to identify the body of Andres Antonio Caceres. My grandma only said, "I knew it." They showed his body. His face had been ripped off and he was only wearing jeans. He threw him in a hole, and his wallet was on the side of the hole. Minutes later, my sister started crying and my grandma yelled at the window, "Leave, it's time for you to sleep past 6. And then we heard a chicken. Well, 6 months ago, my mom started working in a new company from 4 a.m. to 12 p.m. Since my mom doesn't have a license, I have to drive her there at 3:25 a.m. 4 months ago, I couldn't sleep, but I never used my phone in those cases. After a couple of hours, I noticed it was 1:48 a.m. I heard the chairs at the dining table moving. I thought my mom was already getting something to eat. However, when I opened the door of my room, there was no one in there. I closed the door and went back to bed. I thought, must be a demon, and I literally fell asleep right away. At 3:05, my alarm goes off. I went into the kitchen, got some coffee, and my mom came out of her room ready to leave. We left, and because I'm kind of sleepy, I didn't pay much attention to my mom bickering over dishes and such, until my mom said, "Couldn't you sleep last night? Next time you get tea, try to make so much noise." I didn't say anything there because I was still trying to stay awake. I dropped her off and came home, fell asleep, and forgot about it. 12:35 p.m, and we were on our way home, and I asked my mom what she had said in the morning. She repeated all the bickering, and then, "Oh, and also, stop making so much noise. Take your tea to your room." I told my mom I heard the chairs moving, and I thought it was her, to which we both just didn't say anything. We told my grandma, and she said, "Look around the house. Maybe you guys brought an object or something." We do not use any religious objects because we don't believe in such a thing, and so we found a little cross a friend gave my sister, tossed it out, and we forgot the whole thing. Well, 2 weeks ago, my sister, grandma, and I went out of the country, and my mom was all by herself. She texted me at around 3 a.m, asking me if I was awake. I was, and so I called her. "I hear something in your sister's room." I got chills. We live on a second floor. I asked her what she heard, and she said, "It sounds like somebody is walking in the kitchen." I asked her to call 911 because maybe somebody broke in. She asked me to look at the cameras, and I told her to wait a second. Went into the app, and nope. All the doors were locked, and no car or anything was outside. And no, there were no people downstairs, since it's a business that closes at 8 p.m. My mom took the courage and went out, and there it was. Nothing. She went to her room and started praying until we both fell asleep. She asked my cousin to sleep with her for the next week. 3 days later, my cousin said she wouldn't be able to stay. My mom told me she would still be in my room since it's the smallest. A mistake, because I'm the one who's seen more shit than you can imagine. She called me at 4 a.m. and I asked her what was going on, and she said, "I heard something in your closet." Then, on the right side of the bed, like somebody was knocking on it. I told her to pray aloud, so that anything could leave, and she did. Not surprised by this, but she was able to fall asleep a little later. Well, I came back by myself this Thursday, and the first thing I did was take a nap. At around 9 p.m, I woke up and went to the kitchen to get something to eat. As I was opening the fridge, I saw a shadow standing by the bathroom, which is the same place where me and my sister saw my mom a couple of months ago. I started praying. My mom came out of her room and said, "You saw something, right?" Bro, I'm scared. Thinking back, there was probably a number of signs, but most could easily be debunked. Stuff falling off my bookshelf, my friends swearing up and down that they could hear a little girl in the background of my mic while on calls on Skype. At the time, I never paid much thought, but it leaves me wondering. What really got the cogs moving in my head was the time my doorknob randomly started jerking. I don't know if you are familiar with what it's like when a toddler or maybe a cat tries to turn a doorknob. It's like they've got a grip on it, but they're not strong enough to fully turn the knob, so it just weakly turns and then it jerks back. For months, at random moments throughout the day, my bedroom doorknob would do this. I always brushed it off as my cat because he was the type who didn't like for doors to be closed on her. Typical cat stuff. You'd open the door, she'd come walking in, only to immediately leave. I didn't want to keep getting up and opening the door, only for her to leave, so I just ignored it. Not to mention, I was in my 20s, still living at home with my parents, and my dad's office nook was just outside my bedroom door, so I naturally kept my door shut at all times. One day, I was in my room doing my thing when the doorknob started jerking again. I continued to ignore it. It wasn't long before I heard my dad get up and open my bedroom door, and proceed to look around with a confused look on his face. He then says, "Thought maybe there was a cat locked in your room or something." So he heard the door jerking as well, and he confirmed it was not coming from the other side of my door, which means it wasn't my cat. That was when I started to consider paranormal possibilities. I turned to my best friend for a second opinion and thoughts on what I should do. She suggested I get some help with cleansing my house. However, my parents were massive skeptics, and my dad would say that if anyone was ever dealing with spirits and demons, that means they'd simply stray too far from God. But if I wasn't getting any malicious vibes, I could simply try asking who or whatever it was to stop. I decided to ask it to stop, and I waited until the next moment came where my doorknob started jerking again. I looked in the direction of my door and firmly said, "Could you please stop?" And it stopped immediately upon my asking, and it never happened again. I lived in that house for a few more years as well. Some have tried to debunk it as a draft going through the house, or the wood swelling and shrinking with the weather. However, it doesn't add up, given some of the factors. Looking back, I think perhaps my mom and I brought something home with us. My mom loves antiques, and I inherited her love for antiques as well, and our house had a lot of antiques. Without going into detail, I think it was the start of a presence we brought home and would bring into the next home, and would inevitably turn my massive skeptic parents into believers. So I live in a house that isn't old. We moved in when it was first built, about 6.5 years ago. I've been extremely paranoid since a non-paranormal experience about 4.5 hours ago, so this may be the result of that. While I don't immediately assume ghosts are behind everything, sometimes they seem the most logical explanation. There's been doors I've closed that I've later found reopened, and nobody was around except me. And I've heard footsteps on the 2 upper floors when both myself and the dogs were downstairs, and I was home alone. However, I think the most convincing experience was late one night. We had 2 dogs at the time. One younger one, Harper, was about a year old. Our older dog, Ramesses, was about 10 years old. About 6 months after we got Harper, we got a dog doorbell system to help train her. One part attached to the bottom of the back door, one to the bottom of the garage door, and the last part plugged into an outlet. When the dog would press the parts on the door, it would ring like a normal doorbell, and we'd take her outside. This was normal, until it went off at 3 a.m. while everyone was asleep. Oh well, the dog woke up and had to go outside, so she rang the bell. Makes sense, right? Nope. Harper was locked in a crate. She was awake, but she wasn't able to come out of it. Our other dog, Ramesses, was dead asleep on the second floor in my room. I was asleep at the time, and so was my brother. It woke up my mum and dad. My dad had 911 on speed dial, just in case someone had broken in and hit it by accident. There was nobody in the house. The doorbell doesn't run on batteries, so it wasn't a low battery warning, like a smoke detector. We considered a power surge to the outlet, but the other device plugged into the outlet was fine. It takes more than a little bit of wind to cause it to go off, so the only explanation was that someone or something pushed it. But what? We've never been able to explain it, and we haven't plugged the doorbell in since. Maybe they each deserve their own post, but anyway, here's a list of every event that happened to me that I still cannot explain. Grandma's ghost visits to announce her death. My memories of this are a bit fuzzy because I was only 4. I was playing in the backyard with my second cousin while my mum watched us. Suddenly, she looked alarmed, saying something like, "Kids, stay here. Someone's in the house." I remember that this scared me. Of course, we didn't listen, and we followed my mum in the house. No one was there, but there was some noise upstairs, so we rushed there just in time to see a hanging picture get thrown on the floor. My mum was very confused and said she had seen my grandma in the window. That very night, we got the call confirming that she had died. The ghostly arm. My scariest encounter so far. I must have been 9 or 10 at the time. My friend Mike invited me to his place, and we were just chatting with a girl on MSN, until I saw something out of the corner of my eye. There was a black, translucent arm going through the wall. I was too shocked to say anything. My friend, somewhat unfazed, just said, "Oh, you see the arm too?" Apparently he'd been seeing stuff like that a lot. To this day, I still can't explain this rationally. Glove disappears and reappears exactly where it was. I came back to my dorm room from the store. It was during the winter. I put my coat and gloves on the bed. I opened my closet door to put away my things, only to see that one of my gloves is missing. I thoroughly searched my tiny room, nothing to be found. Until, from the corner of my eye, I see something black flash by. And there was the lost glove, exactly where it originally was. Grandpa warns me he's going to die. This one might be a coincidence. I knew my grandpa had been in the hospital for a while, and he was not doing well. Anyway, I saw him in a dream, and he kept it short as he always did. He said, "I'm going now." He was indeed gone that very day. Something punched me. I'm not sure about this one. I was working outside all by myself in a remote swamp area surrounded by fields. I definitely felt something hit me in the back, hard. My first thought was that someone had arrived and had thrown something like an apple or a baseball in my direction. But no, nothing on the ground, no one to be seen. Maybe a bird had hit me and flew away. Who knows? Garbage can moves by itself. Seemingly a classic poltergeist. In 2 instances, the lid of my trash can started to flip around super fast, like someone punched it. And another time it flipped over as if someone kicked it. Each time, it was in my direct field of vision, so I know it's not a rat getting inside or anything. When we first went upstairs, there was a brand new toilet paper holder still in its package in the washroom. The holder would play Christmas carols when you turned it. I thought it was cute and set it up in the washroom. My sister and I used. The whole day, the music did not work when we used the washroom, so we assumed it was dead. At around 3 a.m, my sister and I were sitting in my room and on a video call with my buddy. For context, our washroom is right next to my room, attached. Suddenly, we start hearing jingle bells playing. The 3 of us went silent. Nobody was in the washroom. My parents were asleep and snoring, and my sister and I were together. It stops, and we calm down a bit, but it immediately starts playing again. At this point, my buddy is freaked out and begs me to go and check it out. Being the older sister, I didn't have much choice. I go into the washroom, and the carol stops. I remove the toilet paper holder, break it in half, and throw it outside in the garbage bin. The next day, I went down to the basement to find the toilet paper holder in the middle of the living room, just there, fully intact. I broke it again and threw it out, never to be seen again. Another incident that happened the day after the toilet paper holder. I was sitting in my room and heard a loud bang outside the door. I assumed my sister was putting something up in her room, which was right next to mine, and ignored it. Then I heard 2 more bangs and got annoyed, and went into her room to yell at her. I asked, "What the hell are you making so much noise for?" And she looked at me confused. She says, "I thought that was you." Once again, my parents were both deep asleep, and we double-checked to make sure they were. The night after I was in the washroom and I heard someone come out of a room, shut the door, go downstairs, open and close cupboards, and come back up and go into a room. I was curious as to who it was because it was around 1 a.m. and only my sister and I were awake, but the footsteps were much lighter than hers. Once I was done, I went into her room to ask what she went down to get, and once again she said, "I thought that was you." Now this story is the last incident, and by far the most horrifying. My sister and I went upstairs to grab something from a room. We were in her room for about 5 seconds max. When we came back out, there were 2 handprints on the wall. Black handprints, bigger than both of ours and our mom, and smaller than my dad's. We asked our parents and they had no idea where it came from. These handprints were not there 5 seconds before when we came upstairs. They appeared within the 5 seconds we were in her room. We called our cousins on video call to show them, and my sister went ahead and touched the handprints. Nothing. I went to touch the handprints, and black ink smudged all over my hand. Nothing on the wall, but black ink all over my hand. I had 3 people watching this happen. My sister, cousin, and his girlfriend. I went to wash my hands and came back and touched the prints. Nothing. I'm not too worried about the first few incidents, but the last one still worries me a bit. Why did the ink smudge on my hand? Is it an omen? It happened about 2 years ago, and I still think of it till this day. As a kid, I went to a school that was renowned for being haunted. It was built in the 1910s, but somewhere in the mid-1950s, there was a devastating fire that burned the whole top floor, and many children died that day. They rebuilt the building without the top floor, making it a 2-story building with a really creepy basement. I have a few stories to share about this school. There was always an eerie feeling about the school. If I was walking around alone, I felt like I was always being watched. The wall of one staircase was filled with paintings of children that former students had painted. These paintings took up 3 floors of staircases. Every time my friends and I passed by these paintings, we would find something different. A soccer ball that was never there, a girl with a flower that was never there, etc. One day, we decided to take note of the specific things to see if they were the same the next day. One note that we took was that one girl on the paintings was smiling and looking towards the right at her friends with a flower. The next day, the girl was looking straight, directly at us, with no smile. We then avoided that staircase at all costs. The school had a boiler room that you could peek into from outside, but we weren't allowed inside. Sometimes at recess, when we're playing around that area, we would see white apparitions dart around inside. When we would look through the window, nothing would be there. Being kids, we were a bit curious. One day, we were having an event after school and decided to go up the boiler room door and try to open it, bravely, since our parents were in the gymnasium next to it. When we turned the knob, it was locked. So we knocked on it, 3 times to be exact. Immediately, we got 3 knocks back from the other side, and the doorknob started rattling like it was going to open. We all ran to the gymnasium and never looked back. This story is also about the boiler room, and it may sound absolutely crazy, but I swear it's true, and one of the craziest things that's happened to me. Once when I peeked in from the outside, I saw a huge pipe in the middle of the wall extending into an abyss. At the edge of the pipe, was a girl's body just laying there, presumably dead. I told my friends to look, but by the time they peeked in, it was gone. For about a month from that day, I kept having nightmares of a girl in black. Black hair, pale skin, begging me to help her. It was always the same dream, and when I asked her what she needed help with or from, the dream would end before she could tell me. Creepy. This is a story I heard from the janitors who spend the night at school. They were in the janitor's office in the basement one night, just chatting and having some snacks, when they heard kids laughing. It gradually got louder, and they started hearing multiple kids laughing, balls bouncing, playing, running around, etc. We went into the gymnasium where the sounds were coming from, and they immediately stopped. They found one singular ball in the middle of the gym, and it rolled over to them. Anyway, they eventually broke down the school, and now they've built houses on that lot. So about a month and a half ago, my partner and I moved into a new house. Just for confirmation, it's a standalone house on its own property, not an attached flat or anything like that. On our initial walk through the house, there was some kind of what looked like sigils written on the inside of a wardrobe door. I've always seemed rather sensitive to spiritual things, but didn't feel any bad energy, or as though anything was off, or thought nothing of it. Upon moving in, these symbols had been cleaned off by the property manager. So, since we've been living here, a few things have happened, though nothing concerning until lately. One of the first nights we were there, we both wake up to what sounded like something kind of big running up and down the hallway outside our bedroom. We checked to see that our cat was sleeping soundly next to us, and there was nothing there. We've had the occasional sighting of something out of the corner of our eye. Again, thought nothing of it. Still no negative feelings at all. We have started to referring to whatever we believe may be here as Eddie's friend, because our cat, Eddie, will often go to another room and start chatting away to something as though there's a person with her. She also tends to fixate on particular spaces in the air for good deals of time. Recently, our house has become more active with bumps and knocks, as though someone is there and doing things, when in fact there is nobody there. Still, I've not been too concerned, even occasionally sparing a friendly word or two to whatever it may be. However, yesterday while I was at work, my partner reported having heard a lot of noise around the house and confirmed it hadn't been the cat. Also being woken from a nap by what he says felt like the cat biting his foot. Again, checking and the cat was nowhere to be found. This altercation has left a rather deep scratch in his foot that drew blood. I still haven't felt any particularly indicating energy. I don't like the idea of telling whatever it is to leave, as I have no right to. Any tips or ideas regarding the wardrobe doors? Should I worry or do anything regarding this? Would really appreciate some opinions on all of this, if anyone has any. So I've been able to see what resembles a mist of static in the air since 2018. It happened spontaneously, and I'd previously never had a single experience which I consider paranormal. I don't consider myself sensitive to the paranormal or anything like that. This perception of static mist is essentially the only perception I've ever had which I can consider to fall under the category. Another way of describing it is vibrating points of light. I have no idea what it is, and why I seem to be unable to find more information on it. I don't believe the static mist is visual show. It's three-dimensional and doesn't move when I shift my body's position in space. Hence, why I believe it's an external phenomena and not an internal hallucination or an optical aberration. If what I'm seeing is truly located in my external environment, as I theorize it to be, why isn't it reported on by more people in the paranormal community? I've spoken to a few strangers online who claim they can see it too, and I found a paranormal-related book online which has descriptions matching my experience. Yet so many other paranormal phenomena have entire communities of individuals dedicated to them, whereas I can find practically nothing on this. The lack of information frustrates me, but I'm fascinated by this static mist and curious to understand more about it. When I relax myself into a semi-meditative state of consciousness, the perceptions become much more pronounced. such that what usually looks like a thin mist starts to solidify right before my eyes, condensing until it resembles steam. When I focus on an area of the mist intensely enough, the resulting solidification that begins to occur honestly resembles the preliminary glimpse of some kind of entity or being who was already inhabiting that location, but was previously invisible to human sight. That's my guess, anyway. I also perceive segments of it moving around in space at extremely rapid speeds, in what resemble thin clouds of smoke, darting all around my bedroom. Again, I believe these might be entities of some sort, doing I have absolutely no clue what. That often come near my head and just hang around there, but I'm not sensitive enough to be able to pick up on any other information about them, like their intentions. I can only see a hazy patch of mist, nothing more. Actually, I sometimes think I can feel a slight cool breeze on my skin when it's near me. Does anyone have any idea what this could suggest about the nature of them? Or it could simply be an existing temperature differential in the room itself, rather than something paranormal. Okay, so this just happened to me a few hours ago in the middle of the day, and I'm really freaked out. I work in a retirement home, and my job often requires me to go in the basement with a cart full of dirty laundry. That means I have to use the elevator. I've done this 1,000 times already, and never did I hear or see anything unusual. Now, since I work in a retirement home, amongst a lot of other rooms in the basement, there's also a temporary morgue which is located opposite of the elevator entrance. This morgue was probably used at some point in time, but as long as I've been working there, it's never even unlocked. Nobody used that room for anything. Today I was working as normal, going about my day, not feeling creeped out at all, since it was the middle of the day, and I've been to this basement too many times already, and never had the reason to be scared of it. I went down to the basement, emptied the dirty laundry in the laundry room, and called the elevator down again, since somebody had used it. I pressed the button, but the elevator isn't coming down. Above me, through the closed elevator doors, I could hear 2 of my co-workers speaking and holding the elevator from closing. The space in the elevator is very acoustic, and you can easily hear people on it from the basement, all the way up to the 3rd floor. At this point, I was getting a little pissed off because it was a particularly busy day, and I didn't have any time to spare. So I started knocking on the elevator doors to let them know I was waiting for it. After a few knocks, it seemed to me that they didn't register it as someone knocking for them to get off the elevator. So I decided to knock in a little melody or rhythm to get their attention. Now this is where something very fucking weird happened. Maybe 5 seconds after that knock, I started hearing something knock back. It didn't have any particular pattern, and it sounded like a literal knocking on a door. I first thought it was coming from my co-workers above, but quickly realised it was coming from behind me. I turned around to find the basement completely empty. And I couldn't figure out where it was coming from at first, until I came a few feet closer to the sound. It was coming from the fucking morgue. I froze. 1,000 thoughts came rushing through my mind as I tried somehow to rationalise what I was hearing. I wanted to leave the cart behind and just sprint up the stairs to get there when I heard the elevator finally coming down. It was the longest wait ever. But I finally got on and pressed the button to the 3rd floor, I think 20 times, before the doors closed and got me out of there. Maybe all of this can be very easily explained away with it being an older building. Sounds from the pipes or animals, etc. And being a pure coincidence with my knocking, but I never heard a building ever make a knocking sound on the door like that. Needless to say, it really creeped me out. Anyway, this was my first paranormal experience ever, and I'm interested if anybody has had any similar experiences, or an explanation for whatever the fuck that was. I share a bedroom with my older brother, and we've both experienced some pretty paranormal things in our room. A little background to us. I love horror and anything scary. I own multiple horror movies, a Chucky doll, and even a Ouija board. My brother, on the other hand, doesn't enjoy horror as much as I do, but he does like it. However, he doesn't like my Chucky doll or my Ouija board, and doesn't want to be around them at all. This took place around a couple of months ago, and it didn't really bother me until my brother mentioned something to me recently. Before I continue on to the actual story, I have to explain. I have a weirdly shaped doorway, so I don't have a door yet. Instead of a door, there's a very thin curtain there. So if my room light is off and I was in my room and the hallway light was on, and someone just so happened to be on the other side of the curtain, I'd be able to see the figure of them. Now on to the actual story. At around 2:30 a.m, I was in bed, scrolling through Twitter, reading posts and stuff, when I got an eerie feeling that someone was watching me. So I looked up from my phone to my doorway, and I saw someone standing there. At first I thought it's my mom, because sometimes she gets up at night during that time to go to the bathroom. And usually when she does, she checks on us. But this person had curly hair, and it couldn't have been anyone in my family that was in the house, because none of us have curly hair. And no one in my family is that height, aside from my mom. I stared at the figure for a long time, and they just stood there for about 10 minutes, doing nothing but staring. What was so creepy about it was that it was like they could see me through the curtain, even though I couldn't see them. After a while, they ended up turning around and walking right into the bathroom that's right next to my doorway. Now let me explain myself. Yes, I could have just gotten up to see who it was when that whole thing was going on, or seen if it was my imagination, but hell no, that's a death wish. Eventually, I did end up getting up and going into the bathroom to look through, because no one came back out after a couple of minutes. When I went and checked, no one was there. Nothing was moved and everything looked normal. So I ended up just going back to my room and staying up until the sun was out. Then I fell asleep. The next day, I did end up telling my parents about it, which my mom said she wasn't up at that time and kind of shrugged it off as a crazy coincidence of my mind playing tricks on me. However, my dad was immediately interested because he said that the spare bedroom was suddenly open the next day after what I had experienced. Other than telling my parents and my girlfriend, I told no one else. A couple of months after this happened though, my brother randomly asked me if I'd had any weird occurrences where I'd seen a figure or heard people calling out to me. So of course I told him yes, and then he told me he had heard someone calling out his name when he was home alone one day, and had also said that he had been walking out of the bathroom at one point, and the door aggressively slammed from behind him. He even said he'd been having strange nightmares about a figure that he couldn't really see, but he said he could tell it had curly hair. Personally, I don't know what to think of this. There's really no logical explanation for this that I can think of, especially the experiences my brother had. I do believe in ghosts, and I do believe that what I was a paranormal experience. But I want to know what your guys' thoughts on this. Are me and my family just crazy? Or are we dealing with something paranormal? Every year, a fair comes to my town. It wasn't a thing I really went to often. I've always heard about my friends or family going, but I stayed home not overly interested. Recently, they fused a comic book convention with the fair. People wearing costumes with capes and going on rides seemed like a safety hazard if you ask me. No matter how hard I tried to get excited over the idea of it, or getting involved to go down to the fair, I just never bothered going. And yet, I found myself sitting at a table listening to the sounds of the rides, a bit hazy on how I got there or why. A small set of tickets for the rides in my pocket and smells of deep-fried food tempting me to buy something. I was sitting alone, so why did I get to the fair? I couldn't seem to remember anyone dragging me along. A group sat down at the table next to mine. They were noisy and showing too much affection towards their partners for a family-friendly occasion. I was about to get up and leave to head home when I noticed someone I recognised in the group but by himself. A guy I went to school with, and I had a hard time thinking of his name. We were only 2 years out of high school, and he looked exactly the same as when we last saw each other. He was in my class, but we weren't friends. I still respected him. Honestly, he was the only decent person in our class. He came from a rich family, and yet he wasn't stuck up. I stood hovering at my table, about to leave, when his name clicked. His name was Ashley. That did not make him any friends in school. In fact, people only tended to hang out with him to get free food or borrow cash. From the looks of it, the group he was with was only interested in those two things. Ashley dropped off food and took orders for more. Everyone besides himself wore bracelets that got you on rides all day. I always thought the bracelets cost far too much to really justify buying them. Without any doubt, Ashley was the one who paid for them. I watched as he did food runs, getting whatever they wanted. When he finally sat down, the rest of the group was so interested in their free food, none of them even thanked him or even looked in his direction. Unable to help himself, I went over to his table. "Hey Ashley, we went to school together. Come sit with me for a bit," I told him and gestured towards the empty table. He looked up, unsure of what to do. His friends teased him for being picked up by a girl or asking if I was a girlfriend they didn't know he had. When he didn't answer, I gently took his hand and led him a few steps away. He's always been a pushover. A very kind guy that everyone took advantage of. I'm pretty certain he would have done anything if I asked with enough force. We both felt awkward suddenly sitting across from each other. He was nice enough to start up a conversation first. "What, have you been doing?" he asked in a soft voice. "I work at a factory." "Hey, how about we get you something to eat?" When I stood up, he followed. This guy bought food for all of his so-called friends and nothing for himself. We took a few minutes picking something. He only got a small order of fries, and I found a stall selling some not deep-fried chicken wraps. We both saw the deep-fried Mars bars for sale and commented on how terrible that sounded. Of course, we got one to share. His friends didn't even notice he was missing. They already got their meal and their bracelets for the rides. Aside from if they wanted to play some games, they didn't need his wallet for anything else at the moment. "You really shouldn't let people take advantage of you like this," I nodded towards the noisy group after we sat back down. "It's fine. I'm glad they can have a nice day out," Ashley replied in such a low voice, it was hard to hear him over the noise. He kept his hair long and tied back. Everything about him was just downright soft. The kids in school were brutal on him, and that didn't help him open up anymore. We should have spent more time hanging out back then. They're jerks. I'm pretty sure one of them shoved you in the trash once. They really don't deserve a paid day out. If they want to have fun, they should use their own money. "It's not really my own money either," he said, not denying how he was bullied before. I let out a sigh and let him pick away at his fries. I suppose he always felt guilty living off his parents' money. His parents appeared to be the type to confuse cash with love and pass that down to him. Looking him over, I wondered if this guy had ever really been happy before. He tossed money around trying to make friends and get a shred of positive attention. That backfired in people only wanting to use him. "Sorry, I was being rude. It's really not up to me how you spend your money," I said, admitting I made him uncomfortable. He gave a weak smile and tried to push the deep-fried Mars bar in my direction. That was a burden we needed to share together. At the same time, we shoved half of it in our mouths, the sweetness putting my teeth on edge. The pair of us grimaced at our mistake, and Ashley let out a small laugh from it all. As he was cleaning off his hands from the grease, I noticed he wasn't wearing a bracelet. He'd bought one for those four, but not for himself. After all, it was kind of weird going on a ride alone when your friends were paired up. "Hey, let's get you a bracelet and get on some rides." He looked confused at the offer. I took advantage of his pushover personality and dragged him along to the ticket booth. By the time he got his wallet and debit card out, I already paid and almost had a bracelet on his thin wrist. He looked pretty shocked. That might be the first time someone bought him something. "I can pay you back," he offered quickly. "Don't worry about it. My job pays pretty well. I can afford it." It was the truth. In exchange for wearing down my body, I got paid a crazy amount per hour. More than what most of my classmates would earn after they went to school for a job of their choice. They'd be doing a job they wanted. I got stuck in a boring job that would nearly cripple me in 10 years. At least in those years I could afford to buy a house if I saved up. Then I could switch to a part-time job to pay the bills. "I should ask if my group wants to go on some rides with us," Ashley said, looking toward the food area. I raised an eyebrow at him. It was nice of them to try and include them, but they didn't even notice he left. And they wouldn't until someone wanted him to pay for something. "Do you have their numbers?" "Yes," he replied slowly. "Then send them a text. They can meet up when they feel like it." He accepted the answer because the group of friends were still eating, and he could see how I wanted to do something else. I mostly wanted him to enjoy the day for once. As we walked, he mentally reached for straws on a topic we could talk about. We hadn't spoken to each other a month before, so there wasn't much to what to say. "It's nice to see you doing well. I heard all sorts of rumours in school," he offered a topic. I nearly shuddered thinking back to the nightmare that was high school. My family life wasn't ideal back then. I wanted to move out as soon as possible and started to do any kind of odd job to save up, hiding the money from my parents, for good reason. It all blew up a year before I graduated when my father found my stash and stole it for his vices. I was so angry, I snapped. No one thought a teenage girl could put a full-grown man in the hospital, but I somehow did. He never spoke to me again, and I moved into a terrible apartment to finish my last year of school. Nah, most of it was true. Aside from selling myself for money, that was spread by some douche because I wouldn't sleep with him, I said with a shrug. Ashley looked startled. Maybe because he got stuck walking around with someone who beat up their own parents. If he wanted to leave at that point, I would let him. He stayed following my steps, silent, trying to think of anything else to say. We made our way towards the small section of rides. Some people in costumes passed by, heading towards one of the many contests held throughout the day. I looked towards one of the rides shaped as a boat that went upside down, and Ashley glanced over at the super lame haunted house. When I took a step closer to the boat ride, it took him a second to catch up. I turned on my heel to head back towards the haunted house, knowing he would never speak up when it came to something he wanted to do. Something reflected some light off in the crowd, stealing my attention for a second. Someone had gone all out with their costume. Towering over the crowd in the distance stood a man wearing a large flat disc as a mask. It looked to be made out of some dark grey metal. From behind the mask spilled out black feathers covering his shoulders. I couldn't see much more from the people blocking his body. I couldn't place the costume. For the most part, I could guess what show or video game what people dressed up as. When he turned, the metal reflected the light again. I saw an upside-down smiling mouth on top of the metal mask. I bumped into Ashley by mistake. He stepped in line for the haunted house. When I looked back, the tall man with the odd mask was gone. I didn't see a spot where someone that tall could have gone in such a short amount of time. A bit weird, but I didn't have time to dwell on it. There weren't too many people lined up for the short ride, so we got on pretty fast. The cars were shaped like cartoonish bats. I sat in the hard glittering plastic seat and watched Ashley put a seatbelt on, even though we really didn't need to. These cars went at a snail's pace. The short trip was a very basic dark ride. No flashing lights for people sensitive to that. Sunlight got through small cracks of the building, ruining the illusion. Normally, I wasn't really good at handling haunted houses. Things bumping in my face normally got a reaction from me punching them. The small jump scares in that ride were so minor, I didn't react. But Ashley did. He jumped and grabbed my arm when a skeleton rattled a cage next to us. For a wimp, I was impressed he wanted to go through this. After it was all said and done, we got off and he looked as if he went through a pretty intense experience. "You really shouldn't be mean and tap me on the shoulder during rides like that," he scolded. "I wasn't tapping your shoulder," I lied. His face grew pale. I really shouldn't be messing with him, but it was far too easy. I guided him away from the poorly made ride, him now positive it really was haunted. We needed to find something he could actually handle. I was hoping to let him have a bit more fun before his group stole him away again. We heard his friends first. As we walked, shouting came down the path and the crowds of people started to avoid the spot. One of the couples he arrived with started having a screaming match about something. Apparently, she was giving other guys too much attention, and her boyfriend wasn't all too happy about that. My meek and shy new friend started to hurry over, ready to break up the fight. I held him back before we reached them. We needed to think of a plan before he just jumped right in. A sharp sound that rang through the air made us all jump. The girl said something the guy didn't like, so we lost it. He slapped her so hard, the poor girl almost fell over. Their two friends were so shocked, they couldn't react. Any of the people still watching the whole ordeal froze on the spot, unsure of what to do. I was about to charge in and let loose on him for doing such a thing when the masked man I'd seen before appeared behind the group. Literally appeared. I froze, wondering if I was seeing things. How could someone just step out of thin air like that? The man was so tall, he towered over the group. His body was thin, and I could see his ribs and the outline of his hip bones. He only wore a tattered, dirty sheet around his waist that reached his feet. The mask of dark grey metal with the upside-down mouth reflecting the frightened face of the guy who just smacked his girlfriend. Having fun? The voice came from the mask, croaked, and shouldn't have been loud enough to be heard over the crowd of people. How come no one looked startled by this guy? Aside from the six of us, no one even appeared to be paying any attention to the masked man. All at once, I knew that wasn't the right word. It wasn't whoever, but whatever. That this guy wasn't wearing a costume. Acting on instinct, I grabbed Ashley's head to shove against my shoulder, so we didn't see what was going to happen. In a few seconds, that proved to be a very good idea. Fuck off. Those were the last words the guy ever said. The mouth slipped down on the mask. It glided along the metal as if it wasn't moving on a solid surface. With frightening speed, the creature bent over, half-moon mouth opening wide to fit the guy's entire head inside. I heard screaming from the small group as the head came off, blood spraying everywhere. Ashley wanted to raise his head, but I kept a firm hold on him. He started trembling, terrified of what sights I refused to let him see. I opened my mouth to scream to help for the crowd. The words dying in my throat as I saw everyone else not paying attention to what just happened. The monster quickly got down on all fours to devour the guy's body, blood and gore flying as he did so. The attack only lasted a few seconds, and yet no one looked in that direction. "Ashley, we need to go," I yelled and started to drag him away. "Why? What's wrong?" I heard a snapping sound as the world shifted and changed. I felt almost too dizzy to stand up. Looking around, I saw we were in the same spot, but the masked creature and all the blood simply disappeared. The group of Ashley's friends were missing a person, but acting as if nothing happened. I held his wrist trying to drag him away when everything changed. His face was a little concerned over my panicked state. Ashley honestly didn't remember the last few minutes, like everyone else besides myself. He thought I just needed to use the washroom. That deep-fried Mars bar proved to be a very bad idea. I dragged him along to the washrooms and risked leaving Ashley alone for a few minutes so I could puke up everything I ate that day. I needed to think. What the hell happened? How did no one else remember what we saw? Pulling out my phone, I didn't know what I needed to do for a second. Call the cops? Without proof, I sounded crazy. There wasn't even any blood left behind. Nothing. On a hunch, I looked up the guy's name on Facebook. It took me a few minutes to remember it. Searching through related friends, I finally found his photo, but I stumbled on a page set up in his honour. My blood ran cold. According to the Facebook page, he died in a car accident before we graduated high school. That wasn't possible. I just saw him die a few minutes ago. A noise came from outside the stall and I nearly dropped my phone in fear. I sat on the floor when I puked and hadn't gone up yet, so I saw the feet poking out from the torn sheet under the stall door. Looking up, I spotted the masked creature very rudely staring down over top of the stall. "You shouldn't be in the women's bathroom," I said in a trembling voice, hoping that would make him leave. The smile was still upside down, so I assumed I was safe for a moment. I held out my phone, still displaying the Facebook page, for it to try seeing to get answers. While I sat alone in the stall, I realised something terrible I should have noticed sooner. I didn't remember going to the fair. I should be at work that day. For some reason, not only did my job not call me, but I had no memories of getting up that morning to come here. "Am I already dead?" I asked the creature. I thought I heard it laugh. There goes the theory this was some sort of limbo for the dead. This thing could change the past and bring people to this fair. But for what reason did it drag us here? It wasn't eating everyone it came across. How limited were its powers? I had a million questions and not much to go on. "Fun?" The question in that terrible voice echoed through the washroom. Did it ask me if I was having fun? I was until I saw him eat a man. "Well, not right now. I'm a bit freaked out to have fun," I admitted, knowing that might not be a good answer. "Have fun?" Without giving me a chance to reply, it turned and walked away. Each step makes a sound on the tile floor. I was stunned to say the least. Was that the point of this place? The point of the day? To have fun and whoever didn't get eaten? For some reason I noticed this creature and remembered what it did while the rest of the people here didn't. If those memories didn't fade, I was good as dead by the end of the day. Taking a deep breath, I needed to focus. If my fate was already sealed, at least I could save Ashley. He didn't remember the masked creature and could still make him out of here. I turned off my phone and made my way back outside to meet up to him. Him acting a bit worried about how long left for. I told him it was the junk food not sitting right, and I felt fine now. I took his hand feeling scared to death, but tried my best not to let it show in my face. He accepted his hand being held by someone who was mostly a stranger to him. Whatever else happened, I needed to make sure he had fun today. We walked around and I paid close attention to what he was looking at, trying to get a grasp of what he wanted to do. The bigger rides were out of the question. Along the way to a massive slide, he appeared interested in it, his eyes drifting to a pile of stuffed hippos that could be won from the games. They honestly were the ugliest toy in the entire place. The fabric was a shiny pink and their eyes crossed, but if he wanted it, I'd get him one. The game with the ugly hippos appeared to be a simple one. Just ring the bell with a hammer. I paid for a few times, wondering if I could even get this damn hippo for him. The guy running the game let Ashley go first. He acted a little embarrassed by the fact he didn't even get the wait halfway. The guy running the stall humoured me when I took the oversized hammer. I slammed down the hammer, picturing I smashed the masked face with all the strength in my arms. The bell rang, and both men stood shocked. I may be shorter than them both, but a lifetime of working and now doing 2 years of a job with heavy lifting paid off. In a few short minutes, Ashley had his hippo. His face flushed, carrying the ugly thing around. I wished he had better taste. At least he smiled, that's all that really mattered. We walked through the area with the games. Between some booths, I spotted the masked creature gladly gobbling up another person, as no one else noticed. A cruel reminder of my fate by the time the day ended. How could anyone have fun with that thing walking around? Ashley noticed my mood. We stopped by another game, and I watched as he sat down to play. He picked the game with a bunch of water guns. Without enough people, the game couldn't get started, so he paid for a few kids passing by to join him. I watched with a small smile almost appearing on my face, as he did his best to win at least one round. But he got pretty happy when others beat him. It felt nice seeing the guy who got bullied all through high school finally having a good day. How often did he let himself just be happy like this? As prizes were won, I think the guy running the booth gave Ashley a pity prize. He handed him a stuffed pink elephant that matched the hippo. He gladly took it and paid for a few more rounds to be covered for anyone random walking by to play, before we walked over with 2 boys in hand. Holding out the elephant, he smiled as he offered the plush to me. That was the biggest smile I'd seen him have so far. He put all that effort into winning something for me after noticing how I was feeling. If I didn't hear the distant screams of someone being eaten, I would have thought this was one of the best days I've had in a long time. The hours passed by as less and less people were at the fair. One would assume they were going home, but I knew the real reason. The moment they weren't having fun for a second, they were gobbled up. I didn't know why I lasted the day. Every moment is tense, knowing that a masked creature could appear for my life at any second. As the sun started to set, a fireworks show got announced to end the night. Ashley appeared excited for it and hurried us over, trying to get a good spot. Not once did he mention the friends he came with. Did he even still remember them? How many of them were left? He wasn't at any risk of being beaten. I thought he had more fun than anyone else at the fair that day. I even heard him laugh a few times. During the day, I knew I started to love him, but not in a romantic sense. I've never wanted to date anyone. Holding hands was fine, although anything beyond that made my skin crawl. And yet my chest had some warm moments between the fear of seeing him happy. Just before the fireworks started, I excused myself to the washroom. I saw the masked creature standing nearby. If he wanted to eat me, I didn't want it to happen in front of my new friend. Even if he would forget it afterwards, the few moments of fear and stress was something I didn't want to put Ashley through. I walked into the washroom and I stood in front of the mirror, waiting. I heard the footsteps before I saw the creature. He stopped right behind me. The tall form is hard to see in the dull light of the bathroom. He didn't move closer to ask the question I dreaded all day. Having fun? I let the words fall between us as I tried to figure out my feelings. No, I wasn't having fun. I felt terrified. I didn't want to die. But I didn't think I'd ever had a fun day in my entire life. Honestly, no, not really. But I've always been like this. I don't think I've ever been fully happy before. It was maybe the most I've enjoyed myself, but I don't think my feelings are normal. I've always accepted this neutral state of mind. If you kill me for that, could you at least let Ashley remember this day? I know he enjoyed himself, and I want him to keep this memory. I told it, unsure of what the monster would do. The creature listened patiently for my answer. It might be the longest response he'd ever gotten. That mouth started to drift down until the half-moon shape was at the bottom of the mask. My entire body tensed up, waiting for whatever might happen next. A large, thin hand fell on my shoulder. The creature smiled wide, with the mouth lined with countless teeth. I held my breath, waiting for the end. Then, everything went black. A sound woke me up. Pings from my phone going off. I jumped awake, looking around stunned. I sat in my bed, safe and sound. Grabbing my phone, I looked at the texts coming in. Ashley sent me a few photos. Some blurry ones of fireworks and a final one of a selfie with a stupid stuffed hippo in frame. That day did happen. He mentioned in his messages that he just woke up and wanted to send me photos from yesterday. I didn't even remember getting home or giving him my number. I somehow stayed alive. That creature spared me, but why? I looked over to see the elephant sitting on my computer desk, staring at me with shiny black eyes. Ashley sent me another message thanking me for the day and asking for us to go back to the fair next year. I cared about him, but it wasn't going to happen. We could hang out anywhere but that place. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the pink stuffed toy moving. To my horror, the head slowly started to run upside down. "See you next year," a croaking voice came from the toy. I scooped up the dump-looking pink elephant and tossed it in the back of my closet, then shoved my dresser in front of the door. It seemed I needed to work my ass off to make sure Ashley had no reason to ever go back to that awful fair ever again.